Hi there, everybody. Just to say, we're not actually sort of a mapping company, we're more of an addressing company, but we won't, my CMO will be angry about that. But essentially, obviously, solving the inner city challenge, there are a huge number of things that are going on at the moment in terms of some of the work that Julian's doing, in terms of the sharing of supply chains, etc. But in the logistics space, one area is being vastly overlooked, and it is the accuracy of addresses, and this is what we're going to look at. So essentially, just run through briefly what I'm going to look at. Obviously, the problem, the context in which the business finds itself, some of the solutions that are out there, how we can actually apply some of those solutions, how we can some applications of the solutions, and actually how we apply them. So obviously, right now, traditional addresses basically present a hurdle to modern-day logistics and service levels. They lead to increased costs and reduced customer satisfaction. And obviously, the root cause of these poor addressing isn't actually the address itself, it's just the geocoding of that address. So right now, we have Google essentially telling us where entry points are or where buildings are, and often pins will drop in the middle of a building and won't actually give you an entrance point or actually something useful at that location. Now, obviously, the last mile is a ridiculously expensive part of the delivery journey. Various stats flying around in terms of how much it actually costs. Right now, some McKinsey is saying 50%, a report earlier today from Walmart saying 80% of the delivery cost is actually in the last mile. Obviously, addressing isn't all of that cost, it depends on the model that businesses are running, but essentially it's a humongous part of the cost. Now, obviously, there's a cost from the logistics side. There's also the pain points from the customer side. Right now, I went on to the capital of misery, which is Twitter, to find just a couple of examples of where essentially customers are really feeling the pain point. And this is on-demand food delivery companies, big e-commerce platforms. It doesn't take long. This is just people actually not being able to have their address found in the UK. And big logistics providers. So actually the third-party logistics providers who now starting to feel the brunt as they become more sort of front of house in terms of actually who's providing the service. So what actually does this mean from a business perspective? So I break it down to sort of two areas. So obviously there's the increased costs, which are obviously, as I run through, some of the delivery inefficiencies, and there are some actually indirect costs based off those inefficiencies. Now the second area is reduced market access and customer service levels. So right now there's reduced control, so essentially people can't actually explain exactly where they are. There's also new build delivery issues. Now I've put that as a separate bracket because it's actually quite a large subject. And this is all happening in a last mile delivery context, which is becoming more and more complex and competitive, which I'll come to. So if we look at this example here, this is the delivery location a person would be given to deliver to Westfield. Now, it is a pin that drops in the middle of a building and essentially is completely useless. If we look at the reality of the situation, Westfield obviously is an extreme example, but you can take this for any location that has more than one entrance essentially. There are multiple entrances and they can be reached by various different ways, and you can see very quickly that addresses just aren't working. Now that's on the pickup side. I guess on the delivery side, if you look at residential areas, this is actually my old flat in London, getting stuff delivered there, nightmare getting food delivered. You constantly have a call from the delivery guy. That's because essentially no matter which address you put in, 14 or 41, literally the pin drops in the same location and the guy has no idea where to go. Now just to show you, this isn't just a few odd chances, and I'm sure you guys all have examples of this yourselves, but these are the guys mapping London. This is Google's head office in London. So if you Google in Google, which I like saying a lot, you get this pin which drops in the middle of 5 buildings. If you've been to the Google offices, but essentially you have to peer through the glass, and then you see Google on 5 floors in one building, you're like, right, I'll go through that. Now that's if you're turning up to visit Google. Now if you're delivering to Google, quickly you see that actually the locations to actually making deliveries to that building are not even in that square. You've got to go around the back end of another building, and you can understand right now how much time delivery drivers taking to find those locations, and they have to discover it every time they make a delivery. And some interesting insight actually from some of the guys doing some work in London in terms of the routing and the routing software that's used in London at the moment. They basically, the experienced delivery drivers just don't use it because of this problem, because essentially it's dropping pins in the middle of buildings and it's completely irrelevant. So all this sophisticated routing technology we're using isn't being used by delivery drivers because they are just using their brains because they know that through that sort of experience, it will obviously cost a lot of money and takes a lot of time. So they're sort of harking back to the days of the black cab and the knowledge a bit, and we know what happened there. Well, it's still around, but Uber stepped in. So in terms of we're talking UPS and how much actually this is saving the bottom line. So they've calculated in the US alone, 1 mile per delivery driver per day would save them $50 million just in the US. And this is from a company who are all about efficiency. They remove doors of their delivery vans so people would jump in and out to save seconds. They've got push start engines so that they don't have to turn the key and take more time. And they have no right turns in the US no left turns in the US for their delivery routing because essentially you're crossing traffic, so it takes more time. They are trying to save seconds on every piece of delivery, whilst the addresses are currently just not being seen to. So I come on to, obviously, these are the inefficiencies. So what are the secondary costs? These break down to 3 areas. So if you think about you're making deliveries, you've got the increased driver and customer support. So examples of people calling up to solve problems with where exactly they are or where their delivery is. You've got increased driver churn. It's incredibly frustrating, especially in the on-demand space. You've got drivers flipping to other companies whenever they can. And if you're offering a bad service in terms of the information to give them to be able to make more deliveries per hour, which is how they're paid, then they're going to go to someone else. There's also supply constraints. So talking about experience, if you're starting to put your money into delivery drivers, knowing exactly where to go, that takes time, right? So some core research we've done with some big delivery firms, they give new delivery drivers 50% less parcels for like 3 months after the new guy starts. This is for him to learn where to go and how it works. We don't think that's scalable or appropriate in the modern age. And the last part is supply forecasting. So I don't know if you guys get Ubers. Sometimes when you arrive at your destination or just before, the driver will get a little notification saying next pickup ready. That's because they can approximate when you actually stop. When you're actually about to stop, so they can give the guy the next job because they know that he can go on and complete that job as well. Now, right now in delivery, in the on-demand space, we can't do that because the volatility of time taken at the delivery point is so high mainly because they're trying to find actually where that delivery location is. So how do we solve that? How do we take that volatility down and make people more sure about where to deliver? All of these are essentially barriers to scale. Now, the next part is control. So right now, it's a major theme in delivery. How do we actually deliver to where people want things to be delivered? And obviously there are places that just don't have addresses. If you think about parks, events and festivals, there are unstructured environments that offer no ability to reference where you live. Obviously, where you are. Obviously, if you've got a deliver to me here now GPS thing, great. You can do that and wait around. And I'll come on to some of the other solutions in a second. But essentially, a lot of the best places and a lot of the really important places don't have an address right now. Lastly, new builds. I don't know if anyone's moved into a new build or ever lived in one, but essentially in London there's a huge amount of projects going on, and up to that, they basically have to be there for about 9 months before they're put on the postcode system to actually get anything delivered. So it's a huge problem. If you're living in one of these areas or working there, I just went to the new King's Cross developments and meetings there, and to find offices is just a nightmare. And you see this on the face of anyone who delivers to those locations. When they go into the new build, their heart sinks because they know they're going to have an absolute shocker. And Royal Mail did a study, and 74% of all people in new builds have problems getting services delivered to their address. And this is a problem only going to increase, given the government are looking at building 1 million new homes in the next Parliament. We'll see if that actually happens. But essentially, it's going to be an increasing problem. So talking about the context that this is all happening in, and there is a ridiculous amount of competition in this space, in last mile delivery specifically. There's been a 10x increase in investment, up from 260 million in 2015 to 2.6 billion in 2016. There are around, Accenture worked out around 10,000 on-demand delivery businesses working globally. And this is also in an environment of huge unknowns. If you're working with some of the guys in this room, obviously working in on-demand delivery, you have so many unknown variables. Is your supply going to turn up? What's the capacity, demand? What route are they going to take? Traffic, package size, weather, product stability. There's a lot of uncertainties. And right now, pickup and delivery location, exact one, is one of those unknowns. And what I like to sort of equate this to is when you're talking to your customers, you don't sort of take their email address or kind of take their phone number. So why we seem to be okay with being fairly ambiguous about location, and we don't really think that should be the case. There we go. So there is a solution, obviously, and if you're a cartologist or potentially Rain Man, you'll be able to use those on a daily basis. Essentially impractical unless you're a machine. So the next one is pins. Now, pins are great, unless obviously you want things to be accurate and you want things to be consistent. They offer a really poor checkout experience. You get lots of drop-off from pin usage, and they're basically impossible to communicate anything outside of that platform. You can't talk about that pin, you can't reference it again. If something goes wrong, it's basically you're stuck with this digital thing inside the platform that you can't use ever again. So just a quick run through what we're trying to do at What 3 Words, or what we are rolling out at What 3 Words. So for those of you unaware, we're an addressing solution. What we've done is we separated the whole world up into a grid of 3 metre by 3 metre squares, 57 trillion of them. And we've already labelled every one of those squares with a random 3-word address. So every single place in the world has a 3-word address. Now, what that means obviously is that we can start using it to reference everywhere. So any doorway, any pickup point, you can have a simple 3-word address that is used and individual, unique for that location. So you can start to address specific pickup points, specific drop-off points, and also start to efficiently deliver in complex environments where essentially it's very, very complicated. Now, if we look at the Invocation of Westfield, a simple example, in this case, how would you deliver here? You just give this the simple address of Poker Drain Homes, if that's your desired delivery location. And that obviously will mean that the routing system will use that exact location, so the driver will approach from the right location and won't have to navigate around the whole building. So that's the basic premise. Now, we're obviously all humans, so this is the next part of what just obviously people find addresses, the random words a bit sort of tricky sometimes to digest, but essentially, if I'm trying to type in Toffee Branch Pyramid and I make a mistake, we have a slightly clever autocorrect feature where, based on where you are, it will correct it to the exact location you mean. So data is incredibly accurate, so input is really important, input accuracy is really important. Now, the reason why we've done this, and the reason why this works is a very clever guy who designed the algorithm has separated all the similar sounding addresses so that in this example, table chair lamps is in New York and table chair lamp will be in Australia. So immediately you can start to see, as you're entering that information, you can immediately discount certain addresses that aren't the right ones. So we basically produce a very simple shareable address which will be used to lower operational cost and increase customer satisfaction. Now we wanted to stop talking about this and actually start doing something with it in a developed market. I won't talk about it now, but we're doing lots of stuff in the developing world where obviously there are no addresses, so it's a massive use case. But we feel that there's a huge benefit and an exciting opportunity in developed markets. So we partnered with QuickUp to do a pilot, which we actually did Thursday last week, so a really exciting pilot. So what we did, we had 20 delivery jobs, identical routes done by 2 drivers. The only difference was that one driver got given the traditional address, so the traditional Google address that you type in and the pin would drop wherever it decides to drop on that building, and the other driver got 3-word address. We used examples of places where people pick up all the time: Westfield, Harrods, Harvey Nicks, residential areas in London. So built up areas, so inner city, there's inner city challenge essentially from a logistics standpoint. So we produced a little video. Bear in mind it's a bit rough because it's only happened a few days ago, but don't tell my marketing team when you said that. But that's recording. And so yeah, here's a short video to see what happened.
I'm Danny Hawkins, I'm the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of QuickUp. QuickUp is a last mile logistics business. We empower consumers and businesses, both small and large, access to a last mile logistics solution. We're using technology to make it faster, make it more efficient and more affordable than ever before. The challenge was to take 2 drivers. One would use Royal Mail postcode, And another driver would follow what 3 words to the door pin locations over 20 yards.
My name is Errol Copley. I drive a Piaggio 125 Typhoon scooter.
My name is Octavian. I drive a Honda PCX.
I'm coming now, I'm watching them.
I've done about 17 deliveries, I think. All of them went very fine. Found the customers really fast. The accuracy is better because I know exactly where to go on an entry of a building.
Pretty interesting day today, but there's been a few slip-ups. About 60% to be not great, and about 40% to be good. One of the last drops I had to deliver to BBC, but it was a building similar to this building, but the pinpoint where I had to drop off was actually in the middle of the building, so I had to circle around a few times to find Aaron, who I was picking up on, and it was a big challenge.
Just finished my day, did about 20 deliveries using what 3 words?
Well, today was a pretty interesting day. I done about 20 drops. It was about 60% of the drops where I actually struggled to find the correct location.
I never had to call any customer today. It was a really nice day, really easy for me.
So the results are in, and we've been able to analyse the jobs from yesterday, the 20 that were completed by the driver. We're actually quite surprised and impressed. Extremely impressive, so thank you very much for what we were.
Sorry, it goes on a bit, that one. I'll cut that down. So essentially the main sort of benefits is we see that half the time is spent at pick up and location for each job. That's a ridiculous saving. Also, essentially, we did it in 30% less time. So the 20 deliveries from the 3 words guy was done in 30% less time than the raw mail guy. So immediately we're seeing, and obviously we've got a lot of data, so we're sort of working through it. So we'll get some more stuff out there. But essentially, it's showing the benefit of being accurate in location. So just very quickly, and we had a real, and Nicholas is here from QuickUp as well, so please do speak to him. But we had a really good experience with the guys, and we very quickly integrated our API into their platform, so we were able to essentially enter a 3-word address for any situations where there was a 3-word address, and that long was pinned on a map and passed directly through to the driver. So the driver is aware of the 3-word address, he navigated using whichever navigation tool he wants, and it goes straight to that pin. So he's aware that when it's a 3-word address, he doesn't have to just throw away his phone as soon as he arrives at that location, he can actually use that as the pickup. Now, I was going to stop there on this presentation, but I saw obviously the second part about some of the stuff we're doing with drones and smart cities, and we won some reward earlier in the year about work with innovation. Now, the reason why we're specifically interested in the logistics space is because of what's happening with these guys and these guys as well. So what we find is, right now, if you think about it, how are these guys going to know where to go? If we're really keen to be fully autonomous, how do you tell a drone where to land? How do you tell a robot where to stop? Right now, as Verge said, it isn't literally robots just aren't going to know where they're going. So something needs to happen pretty rapidly with addressing. And what we think we produce is something that's really human. We've essentially humanized GPS and made it error-free. And yeah, so happy to have any sort of questions at the end, but thank you very much for your time.